September 21, 1944. Steeple Morden, England. The war hasn't slowed down. Engines are still screaming overhead. Men are still dying over Europe. And General James Doolittle is standing on a grass airfield, holding a medal in his hand. Lieutenant Royce Priest is at attention in front of him. Young, skinny, still smells like aviation fuel and fear. Doolittle pins the Distinguished Service Cross on his chest. Then he leans in and says something no general is supposed to say at a medal ceremony. This was the bravest thing I've ever seen, and the most foolish. That's not a compliment. That's a warning. Because here's the truth. Royce Priest didn't just save a man that day. He broke the law. He disobeyed a direct combat order. He risked his aircraft. He risked his mission. He risked setting a precedent that could get hundreds of other pilots killed. By the book, he should have been court-martialed, possibly shot. Instead, he's standing here with a medal, but not that medal, not the Medal of Honor. And that wasn't an accident. This story isn't about a dogfight. It's not about shooting down Messerschmitts. It's about a single impossible choice. A 38-inch wide cockpit, a plane not meant to do what it did, and a general who had to decide whether rewarding heroism was worth encouraging suicide. Rewind. August 18th, 1944, Northern Europe. Major Bert Marshall is leading the mission. Marshall is the guy everyone wants to be. Former quarterback, natural leader, ace pilot, squadron commander, the kind of officer who makes you feel safer just by being in the same formation. They're flying low. Too low, because this isn't a glamour mission. It's strafing, rail yards, rolling stock, anything that moves. Then they see it. A train, boxcars. One of them is marked with a red cross. That should mean something. That should mean medical supplies. Protected, safe. It's a lie. The sides of the boxcar drop, and the boxcar turns into a gun nest. Flak explodes upward like the earth itself is angry. Marshall's aircraft takes hits. Metal screams. Hydraulics fail. The Mustang shudders. He's wounded. The plane is wounded, and Marshall knows the math instantly. He's not making it back alone. He gets on the radio. His voice is calm, professional. He orders the flight to abort. Then he gives a direct order to Royce Priest. Leave him. That's not emotion. That's command. If you stay, you die too. If you land, you'll be captured or killed. If you try to take off again, you'll crash. This wasn't in the manual, but the rule was clear. You don't land behind enemy lines. You don't sacrifice a second aircraft. You don't disobey a direct order in combat. Marshall points his damaged P-51 toward a wheat field and puts it down. He's alive. Barely. Royce Priest is still circling overhead, listening, and now the math is brutal. Priest hears the order. Abort. Leave him. Every part of his training agrees with Marshall. Every regulation backs him up, but he's watching his commander limp away from a burning aircraft. And Priest knows something else. The Germans will be there soon. Minutes, not hours. Marshall will be captured, or shot, or worse. Priest has a choice to make. This is the moment. The one nobody trains you for. If he obeys the order, he lives with it forever. If he disobeys, he might die in the next 5 minutes. He drops his flaps, turns toward the field, commits. The P-51 Mustang is a beautiful machine. Fast, sleek, deadly. It is not designed to land in a wheat field. The belly scoop hangs low, one snag, one furrow, and it rips open like a tin can. The landing gear isn't meant for dirt. The wings aren't meant for uneven ground. This should end in fire. But it doesn't. The Mustang slams down, bounces, skids, and somehow stays upright. Priest is alive. He's landed behind enemy lines. Now the real insanity begins. Marshall comes running out of the woods, not grateful, furious. He's waving his arms, yelling, because Priest just disobeyed him, just risked everything, just turned one crash into a potential double execution. There's no time to argue. They have seconds. Then comes the problem no engineer ever intended to solve. The cockpit, 38 inches wide. That's it. Designed for one man, one seat, one set of controls. No jump seat, no escape hatch. They don't fit. So they improvise. Marshall climbs in first and sits in the seat. Priest climbs in on top of him. Literally. Marshall is sitting upright. Priest is on his lap. Priest's helmet is smashing into the canopy. His knees are spread around Marshall's torso. The instrument panel is half blocked. The controls are barely reachable. This isn't flying. This is balancing a human tower at 200 miles an hour. The plane is overweight, badly. The math is brutal again. They shouldn't get airborne. Priest opens the throttle. The Mustang lurches forward. The wheat tears into the scoop. The engine coughs. They hit the trees at the end of the field. And somehow, they clear them. Barely. The Mustang claws into the air like it doesn't want to die yet. This is the part nobody puts on recruitment posters. There's no cheering, no music, just pain. Marshall's legs are pinned under Priest's weight. The circulation starts to go. First it's tingling, then numbness, then nothing, dead weight. Priest can't shift, can't move. His head is pressed into the canopy. His neck is screaming. The engine temperature starts to climb. That scoop, it's full of wheat. Airflow is choked. Cooling is failing. The needle creeps into the red. They have 180 miles to go. Priest has another choice to make. Slow down and give the engine a chance to cool, but risk German fighters. Or push it. Overheat the engine. Pray it holds. He chooses speed. The Mustang screams. The cockpit smells hot. Metallic, wrong. Marshall can't feel his legs anymore. He doesn't know if he'll ever walk again. They don't talk much. There's nothing to say. This isn't bravery now. It's endurance. Minute after minute, mile after mile. Any engine hiccup means death. Steeple Morden finally appears. The airfield looks unreal, like a mirage. Priest brings the Mustang down gently. Too gently. If anything breaks now, it's over. The wheels touch, they roll, they stop. Silence. Ground crews sprint toward the aircraft, then they stop. Because what they're seeing doesn't make sense. Two men unfold out of a cockpit meant for one, like circus performers escaping a box. Marshall can't stand, they carry him. Priest can barely move his neck. The story spreads instantly, and it reaches the one man who has to decide what this means. General James Doolittle. Doolittle reads the report, twice. Then again. He knows exactly what Priest did. He also knows exactly what Priest violated. A direct order in combat. Landing behind enemy lines, risking aircraft and personnel. If he court-martials Priest, he punishes a man who saved his commander's life. If he gives him the Medal of Honor, every hotshot pilot might try the same thing next time, and most of them won't get lucky. The Medal of Honor isn't just a reward, it's a message. Doolittle refuses to send the wrong one, so he splits the difference. The Distinguished Service Cross, honor the bravery, acknowledge the heroism, but withhold the highest medal, because this wasn't something the Army could afford to encourage. That's the cold logic. That's command. This wasn't just one insane rescue. It was a precedent. The Army Air Forces lived on discipline, formation flying. Orders obeyed instantly. No debates at 300 miles an hour. If Priest gets the Medal of Honor, the message is simple. If you feel strongly enough, you can ignore orders. That's poison in wartime. Because most pilots weren't Royce Priest, most engines wouldn't survive that abuse. Most wheat fields don't end in miracles. Doolittle had already lost too many men to one more try decisions. One more pass, one more bomb run, one more risky landing. Heroism was contagious, so was disaster. If even one young lieutenant thought, well, Priest did it and tried the same stunt, Doolittle would be reading 2 death notifications instead of 1 medal citation. That's the calculus commanders live with. It's not clean, it's not noble, but it keeps squadrons alive. Here's something else nobody talks about. Priest didn't know how this would end. After the adrenaline faded, after the debriefs, after the pats on the back, there was silence. No medal ceremony, no public praise, no headlines, just waiting. Every footstep outside his quarters sounded like it might be that knock. The one with paperwork. Charges. Disobeying a direct order in combat wasn't a slap on the wrist. Men had faced firing squads for less, and Priest knew it. He replayed the flight in his head. Every second, every violation. He didn't regret saving Marshall, but he understood something terrifying. He didn't have a defense. I felt it was right isn't a regulation. There wasn't time doesn't erase orders. The math was brutal again. If the engine had quit, if the landing gear had collapsed, if the Germans had arrived 30 seconds earlier, this story wouldn't be told as heroism. It would be told as recklessness. Marshall never blamed Priest. But he didn't celebrate the decision either. From his side of that cockpit, the rescue wasn't romantic, it was suffocating. Priest's weight crushed him into the seat, cut off blood flow, turned his legs into dead meat. Every minute in the air felt like a gamble with paralysis. Marshall understood the command side of this better than anyone. He had given an order, it had been ignored. That should bother him. And it did, not because Priest saved him, but because Marshall knew what this meant for discipline. He later admitted something quietly. If Priest had died trying to save him, Marshall would have carried that forever. Not as gratitude, as guilt. James Doolittle wasn't some desk general. He'd flown, he'd risked everything. He'd led men on missions where survival was optional. He understood impulse, he understood loyalty, but he also understood statistics. For every miracle, there were a dozen burned-out craters that never made the news. Doolittle knew that war stories age badly. What starts as incredible courage turns into, why didn't you try harder? Turns into, Priest did it, why didn't you? That's how pressure kills people. So when he said it was the bravest thing he'd ever seen, he meant it. And when he called it foolish, he meant that too. Those words weren't judgment. They were containment. The Medal of Honor isn't just for courage. It's for approved courage. Courage that aligns with command intent. Courage that doesn't undermine control. Priest's flight was outside the system. It worked, but it wasn't repeatable. That made it dangerous. So the DSC became the compromise. High enough to acknowledge the insanity. Low enough to quietly signal, don't do this again. No parade speeches. No recruitment posters. No mythology built around copying it. Just a line in the records. And a warning wrapped in ribbon. This is where war gets uncomfortable. The same action can be heroism or crime depending on the outcome. If the engine quits, court-martial. If it holds, medal. The line isn't moral, it's mechanical. Engines don't care about intent. Gravity doesn't care about loyalty. Royce Priest beat physics by inches. That doesn't make it policy, it makes it a miracle. And armies can't run on miracles. Nobody officially talked about what Priest did. That was deliberate. No training memo went out. No briefing slide. No lessons learned lecture. But pilots talk. They always do. In mess halls, in tents. Over cigarettes and bad coffee at 3 a.m. The story spread anyway. 2 men. 1 cockpit. 1 engine screaming in protest. And just as important as what happened was what didn't happen. Priest wasn't punished, but he wasn't celebrated either. That silence was the message. The unspoken rule became clear. You might save a life, but don't expect the system to thank you for breaking it. That kept men alive, because it forced them to hesitate just long enough to think. Here's the hard truth. Courage without boundaries is chaos. Priest wasn't wrong, but he also wasn't right in a way the military could replicate. His decision worked because the field was barely usable. The Germans were delayed. The engine didn't explode. The airframe didn't shear apart. The weather didn't turn. Gravity showed mercy. That's not doctrine. That's roulette. Doolittle knew that if you start rewarding roulette, you get gamblers, not pilots. And gamblers die loud. Long after the war, Priest could still feel it. Not the physical weight, the moral one. He never denied what he did. never apologized, but he never bragged either, because he knew something civilians didn't. He won because the universe blinked. One more degree of heat, one more pound of drag, one more second on the ground, and Marshall would have died anyway, along with him. That knowledge sticks. It doesn't age well. Marshall lived. But survival has a cost. He carried the memory of that cockpit like a bruise that never fully faded, pinned legs, crushing weight. Knowing his pilot was gambling both lives on sheer will, he never forgot that the order he gave was correct, and that priest ignored it. Both things can be true. That contradiction is war in a nutshell. Doolittle wasn't cold, he was cautious. He had already seen what happened when hero stories went unchecked. Men chased legends, they chased glory, they chased medals, and gravity always collected its debt. So Doolittle drew a line, not in public, not in ink, in restraint. He honored the man, not the method. That distinction matters, because armies don't survive on exceptional individuals. They survive on predictable behavior under fire. This story refuses to sit still, because we want clean answers. We want heroes crowned and villains punished. But war doesn't care about clean, it cares about function. Priest functioned once. Doolittle had to think about the next 1,000 missions. That's the scale commanders live on. That's why this decision still sparks arguments, because it asks a question nobody likes. Should the system reward the act or protect itself from the example? There's no comfortable answer. Royce Priest saved a man's life. That's fact. He also violated everything that kept air warfare from collapsing into chaos. That's also fact. James Doolittle understood both, and he made a call that history still argues over, because sometimes heroism is real, but still too dangerous to encourage, and sometimes the bravest thing in war isn't pulling back on the stick, it's knowing when not to turn one miracle into doctrine. That's why this story matters. Not because it's inspiring, but because it's honest. And war is rarely kind to honesty, but it runs on it.